Hello, everyone. This is the Healing Grapevine Recover Now presenter view show, and I am fortunate enough to have Ramona Melvin with us today on the show. This show is designed to help you understand more about the ways to recovery. And Ramona, thank you so much for showing up for the show.
Thanks, Russ. Glad you could help me with this.
A little bit about myself. I have recovered from, I hesitate to name what it is that I recovered from. This is how I got involved with these topics. Some people call it the
Multiple chemical sensitivity. That's
multiple
our name
chemical
for
sensitivity, right? Some people call it the super gana kaka kaka. Some people call it super Lyme. Some people call it the M word, Morgellons.
Run!
Other people call it just Lyme. So there's all kinds of different things about this, but I'm really glad to finally get Ramona here because there's been a lot of questions that have been coming in from our network. That's all of our various sites, including healinggrapevine.com and the blog as well as Ramona's rather large mailing list. So in response to all of your requests, we're going to talk about microcirculation, far infrared, and the core principles behind this kind of what we call deep recovery. Ramona, welcome. So I'm on your site right now, and so our audience can actually see healinggrapevine.com. Uh, you know, people visit you every day and sign up for your newsletter. So I just wanted to make sure that people knew that that resource was available to them. And you want to tell us a little bit about your story? I'm going to flip over to your Google Plus page, About Us page, and you just tell us a little bit about how did you, how did you do this? Like, what got you involved in this?
Well, it wasn't exactly, I guess I did kind of volunteer, but I had been just a very aware person about nutrition. To me, early on, as an athlete, I saw the obvious connection between the fuel as food that you put in your body and the translation for energy, performance, including aesthetics. I was a competitive bodybuilder for a long time as well, so I had a very clear relationship about lifestyle choices, and those choices directly impacting my vitality and health. That was a long time ago, and life goes on, and I had kids, and then about I forget what it is, 6 years ago or something like that, I was bit while living in Wisconsin and contracted acute Lyme and then a chronic Lyme condition where I had heart arrhythmias and the Lyme arthritis, which was so severe that I went on some pain meds for just a little while right in the beginning before I was identifying what I was battling. And I learned how to manage those symptoms. I was told at that time that I would live with Lyme, that there really weren't any positive or certain success stories to recovering from Lyme disease, and that most people were doing the antibiotic cocktail, which I refused to do. I just wasn't going to do that. I knew immediately that that strategy had long-term effects later on, a lot of compromise to the organ systems and immune systems when you do that. Now, I really want to state right up front that, medicine, modern medicine and Western medicine, when you're in trouble and you've got some trauma, you go to the hospital, you get it taken care of. My arm comes off, I'll be knocking on their door looking for their help. But the use of long-term prescription medicines and that strategy toward our ability to recover just did not make any sense to me then, and I have even more understanding and research and confidence as to why that doesn't make any sense, and it's how I recovered. So kind of fast forward, I know I'm chatty here, but fast forward, and then I was compromised by what a lot of the community call Morgellons. We are really making a stand that it's better to use the term multiple chemical sensitivity in this community because officially the CDC came out and said, oh, we can't find any cause for this. It probably kind of is in everybody's head. And that just brings up a lot of difficulty in finding treatment, but it doesn't have to. So don't use that term anymore. We're multiple chemical sensitive individuals, and we need to employ a detox program. That's what the Recover Now series is all about. That's what birthed the Healing Grapevine. When I recovered 2.5 years ago now it's been, and I've got no Lyme episodes recurring, all symptoms of the skin irritations, lesions, and chronic fatigue, and brain fog, and digestive disorders all gone. And that's been 2.5 years now. I am recovered. And so out came the healing grapevine. I had to share this information. I know a lot of folks who are still, in the nightmare. They're all of the same passion afterwards. When they recover, they're like, "Wow, I just got to share this. This is important that everybody understands." So today, I think we're going to talk about some of the real root factors to our health. And so
let's go a little bit into, if I go to your website, healinggrapevine.com, and I go into the right sidebar and I click on learn more about far infrared therapy, there's a video there that's gotten quite popular. And this video is, how does far infrared really work? And what we've done is we've taken a screen grab from that because we are in the middle of manufacturing that talisman, or that kind of process map, if you will. It's actually the electromagnetic spectrum. But you've actually added your own touch. You created this chart. So I have up on the screen now our screen capture of your large, kind of drawing board electromagnetic waves.
My artistic moment.
Yeah, your artistic moment with resonant frequencies, where you try to talk a little bit about resonant absorption. So do you want to guide us through that, or where would you like this conversation to go for our audience? You want to move it into that chart?
Yeah, I think that one of the key things to really understand, I like using analogies to help people get through Biology 101, because most of us slip through our science classes, and we don't really realize that today you want to stay healthy in a world full of toxic exposures and pathogens and antibiotic resistant bugs, strains, and GMOs, and all these wonderful technology byproducts or side effects that are happening around us. We've got to go back and understand some fundamentals about biology. If you do that, it takes the scary out of it. So the fascinating thing that I still continue to just drink in as much information as I can about far infrared is, how did it work and why? Because it was the single most important tool in my Recover Now program. Yes, I did a comprehensive detox program, cleansing and flushing and targeting the toxicities and pathogens that I was loaded up with. Yes, I did a rebuild with enormous amounts, copious amounts of supplements, and still today really solid dietary support program. But the far infrared was that kind of magic moment. And why is that? That's what's so fascinating. It's about microcirculation. And as a sophisticated organism that we are, how many trillion cells are we, or something like that? I don't have my numbers off the top of my head, but we are this fascinating, sophisticated system of cellular, of cells, right? And interesting enough, we're mostly non-human cells over human cells, and that's all okay. That's the normal homeostasis of a human being's biology. What makes us stay healthy, what the immune system and organ function and cellular regeneration are all dependent on, is the flushing activity of our microcirculatory systems. And that's all about water, really, basically, to keep it simple. It's about water. And far infrared has actually been researched for a long time in the biotechnology industries. And what they found was that very particularly range, let's see, what is it? It's 8 to 10 microns within the far infrared range literally stimulate our metabolism. Metabolism is the exchange of the nutrition to the cell, of the waste out of the cell, and all of this is happening in a fluid, in water, blood, various bodily fluids. All of these are being activated and stimulated and flushed when working properly at the deep, deep levels by the metabolic rate. athletes happen to be really, often very superior in their health, there's research that shows they have far less parasitic life forms they're hosting. They have, higher cardiovascular output, lower blood pressures, lower hypertension stresses, and all of that is because they're constantly flushing and moving that circulatory system through athletics. Far infrared can do the exact same thing, and you don't have to be an athlete if you don't want to be. You're stimulating that deep circulation in the system by the activation, the water molecules being activated and oscillating. And in that oscillation, like it shows on that chart, the exchange of nutrition so that you're properly nourished and the flush of toxins happen to keep us vital, healthy, and rock and rolling for as, until we maybe get in front of a truck or something like that. I don't know. Anyway, so that was really a fundamental piece for me to understand, and it makes a great analogy in a couple of ways. Something that was just shared with me the other day, actually by my college-age daughter, was something called the sick building syndrome. You have that, Russ, I think, at Wikipedia's. We've got the
Yeah, I've
Wikipedia
moved to the Wikipedia
definition
entry.
of that.
Do you want me to read the first paragraph of it? And then you
Yeah,
can kind of
sure.
expand on that? Okay, let me just move it over here before you just jump into these new concepts here.
It's an excellent analogy, the sick building syndrome. Okay, think of this as your space that you occupy, right? So I love this as an
Yeah,
analogy.
it says just
What's going
briefly,
on
it says a
today?
combination of ailments associated with individuals' place of work, an office building, or residence. A 1984 World Health Organization report into syndrome suggests up to 30% of the new and remodeled buildings worldwide may be linked to symptoms of SBS. Most of the sick building syndrome is related to poor indoor air quality.
Okay, that's an interesting point right there. Most of the syndrome is related to poor indoor air quality. That's circulation. Okay, let's think about that for a second. So when if it's an office building, it's a little more obvious. There are a lot of office buildings where the windows won't open up and the ventilation system doesn't go deep into the building, stir up those dark, dank places and closets and basements and, attic corners and that kind of, all these like corners and sections of the building that aren't being really deeply flushed and circulated properly. What do? They're hosting all kinds of mold. Really is one of the biggest issues that come out of the sick building syndrome, but it can be biological contaminants also, because once that condition and that atmosphere, that environment begins to degrade, it hosts and invites more degradation in, more opportunistic pathogens, more sophisticated life forms. It kind of starts at the lower life form levels, single cell organisms, and once they've established and they're growing happy and the fungal molds are in there, along comes a bacterial form that can then host itself and literally evolve more frequently, more lively in the energy or the environment that's stuck and stale in the corners of these buildings. And over time, it literally gets condemned, if you will, or labeled a sick building because of that level of mold, the chemicals that are held in there, the lack of circulation. Back to what's the main factor? Lack of circulation, lack of ventilation, moving air. Because we're talking about in a building space, it would be air. But here in the analogy of our body, it's the waters. It's our fresh waters and our digestive system and our blood and our lymph. All of these are liquid, if you will. And so, but what is the same problem? Lack of good circulation. So that was really cool to me when I saw that analogy. Another one that's really helpful for folks is, a lake. So if a lake begins to dry up, become stagnant, it doesn't get the deep flushing properties of whatever the reasons are, whether it's rainfall, spring fed, proper evaporation. It maybe gets introduced an algae form or a fish form that wasn't normally in its ecosystem, and that begins to change the environment towards supporting that opportunity of that new biological. This is actually what a lot of people find when they say, all of a sudden bugs are attracted to me. I'm the only one at the picnic the ants come marching up to. Or, now I feel bugs on me all the time. What's going on? Well, it's really just biology. It's not Stephen King. So if you clean up your system, clean up the lake water, or you ventilate the building properly, it's going to kill the mold. It's going to move out the sophisticated life forms that are growing, the bacterial forms, the viral forms. They all just start building on each other to what? To take over that environment. When we talk about our bodies, obviously that's going to lead to poor health for us. Our cells are then competing with those cells. And that's really what multiple chemical sensitivity is. That's really what our team is focusing on in the idea of Morgellons and recovering from Morgellons, recovering from Lyme disease. I'm fully recovered. And it's because I've taken back control of my environment, my internal bioterrain, cleaning it up, circulating it, flushing it, feeding it properly. I'm vital. I'm operating the way a happy immune system, a natural human biological organism ought to.
Excellent. So I think that's a pretty good overall coverage of, the general. We've been off in a few different directions, and I think to wrap up this week's call or presenter view, we should probably get into what are the solutions for all of this. I mean, we're talking about, it wasn't really clear in your conversation. We're looking at electromagnetic waves. We understand that coherency is created through water interaction with what we call infrared heat or radiant heat. And let's talk about specifically what you're saying is that it's setting the body's original kind of metabolism back to its optimal rate. Is that what's happening when you're using an infrared
Correct.
Pad or a heating pad or a sauna, or you're going out in the sun and lying on black rocks like I used to do in Hawaii? Or what is all that?
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Well, so yes, that's exactly what I'm saying, that actually biology, our human biology would not exist without far infrared of the electromagnetic spectrum. I mean, I'm being simple here. That's not the only reason, obviously, but it was a very key element to life, birthing on this planet and becoming, over time, a human organism. We are so sophisticated. If you think about it like, the difference between a population of single-celled organisms like algae and pond scum and moldy things, that's where we really started, in that primordial soup. We have grown into something that has to have communication inside in order to function properly. And the far infrared wavelength very specifically helps to stimulate and support the metabolism necessary for our biological life form.
I was reading
That is about as simply as I could say.
I think that was well said. I'm reading a book called Mind and Tissue by Dr. Raymond Peat, and in it he's pointing out that elderly tend to have very cold limbs, and as they age, it gets more and more cold, and then when you're dead, you're like super cold. I think that kind of wraps up far infrared in some ways and microcirculation in some ways. I mean, I'm oversimplifying it a little bit, but I also remember a quote, the Chinese, my friend is an acupuncturist, is a long line of acupuncturists, and they always said that the Chinese say that you die from the feet up. You start losing your circulation and you start losing your microcirculation. They have their own name for it. But I find it interesting because they're like both the Chinese, the Korean, and a lot of Asian cultures are very at home with understanding far infrared. I mean, I think that's why the huge movement, like in jade far infrared pads and all those kind of early versions of far infrared and everything. That comes from.
Well, yeah, it was the Japanese, I think, who are actually credited with developing the far infrared heating panels in the first place. And they have done an enormous amount of research on it. And yes, the elderly is a great example of, the aging process and what's happening. And by losing that body heat, losing that far infrared, because we naturally have it, but if we get chronically sick, we're often more chilled. Diabetes is certainly, the lower body temperature and the loss of circulation into the limbs is a really big one with diabetes. And a lot of the elderly issues and ailments that come along, are absolutely, it's about that circulation. They're losing that circulation at that deep, there's that place where, if you remember, you got your arteries and your veins doing their job, getting blood around in the body, and there's that place where they have to meet way down inside the capillary structure of the arteries and veins, the big guys we understand and know and see. But way down in there is at the very tip ends of all cellular function. And that begins to lose integrity over time. It gets built up with toxins over time. And those are two compromising reasons why we lose our far infrared. So that was
I
a great
also heard,
example
which
of
took
it,
me a
yeah.
long time to really believe it, that you can actually recultivate or redevelop your resonant absorption or your far infrared over time. So if you're using like the pads that you provide, or even the sauna, which I try to use on a regular basis, or anything else like that, given a certain amount of time, as you begin to literally come alive again, your body will be able to reach its core far infrared temperatures.
That's right. And why is that? Because you've reconnected or reactivated that deep microcirculation in the body. When that circulation and that exchange is working properly way down inside, that is actually what creates heat. When something moves, when a molecule, an atom, a cell moves, it creates heat. So that would then be, when you stimulate the far infrared, you absorb the far infrared, you get that stuff turned back on, and you get your circulation working again properly, then yes, your body temperature will elevate back up to that normal 98.6 that we're supposed to operate
And also,
at.
as a
So,
customer and a background in the sciences and the fringe sciences as well, I find it fascinating. Like the word resonant means to resonate with. So I always found it surprising that far infrared actually fell in that family, because I knew electromagnetic waves would resonate, but I always considered heat to be more kinesthetic spectrum, because there's two kinds of spectrums, kinesthetic and electromagnetic. We'll probably cover that in another show. But what I found.
yeah, we will. And that's a good point, because when it comes to far infrared, it's really not about heat. As far as the therapy goes, you don't have to get
Well, yeah, and that's
into
what
a
I think.
hot sauna
I think people
for it
really
to
have a
work.
misnomer. I mean, it's really a misnomer about that, because they don't really understand resonance. For those listening, if you've ever like played a piano or rang a bell, or maybe the phone rang and you had your head near the piano or something, it's the only example I can give. When the whole piano kind of vibrates in tune with like somebody yelling across
Yeah,
the room, where you hear it echo inside, or when you ring a bell and maybe your guitar,
yeah.
that's called a resonance. Or if some.
Right, you actually
Yeah, you
can
can hear
feel
it,
it.
literally. And with sound,
Yeah,
sound's the kinesthetic
yeah.
spectrum. It's not the same as the electromagnetic waves on this chart that we have in front of us. But literally, it works the same way.
Mm.
Resonance in the kinesthetic spectrum for sound, those of you who might be into sound healing or wonder what all that hoopla is about, it's funny, it's very similar. There's resonance in electromagnetic spectrum. So the point is if you stopped resonating at that kind of heat and you would like to re-resonate, far infrared pads and tools can get you back in tune, literally. And so we'll talk more about that in some other conversations.
Yeah, that makes me think about another show, and I want to witness it right now because I would love to cover that
Can I get a
topic very
witness up in here,
specifically,
please?
which is, can I? Let's definitely. I want to cover that topic about how the that far infrared, that resonation at the cellular level is what
Yeah, and
communication
don't get me
is.
started on
And
resonance, right?
right? And how we can access, and there's all this wonderful new research going on with epigenetics about DNA, and well, my mom had the disease, my grandmother had the disease, so I'm going to have the disease. And guess what? The good news is they're discovering, no, actually, there's a lot of information showing how that communication information on the DNA map of our biology, of who we are, can be affected by nutrition, all kinds of environmental
Well, they're
factors.
huge, yeah.
All environmental
Dr.
factors.
Robin Kelly and Dr. Bruce Lipton, who really have put a lot of the work out there on epigenetics recently, at least to the alternative communities, and now it's pretty much going mainstream. I mean, it's pretty clear that
Yeah,
it's pretty clear
good
that
stuff.
that's all tied to the methyl sulfate groups, but we'll get in that in another episode. But the point is,
And resonation. So
yeah,
resonating. This
yeah,
resonator
and
spells
resonation
back
really
to
has to do with
health, right?
heterodyning amongst waves and blah blah blah, and stuff that I won't drag into this show. But
Yeah.
that's my background is in.
So to recap, if I may, just so in each show I'm doing my best to kind of close the loop about things. Really, recovering today is about flushing toxins and pathogens, and we all have them. It's not that big a deal. Let's just kind of get over it and say, okay, look, for all the reasons there are, I've got heavy metals, pesticides, all kinds of chemical exposure points throughout my life. I've had Lyme, I've had chicken pox, viral loads, bacterial loads. We have to clean them out. You got to target it, clean it out, and then you have to rebuild. And you have to make some lifestyle changes, and that's kind of the rub for a lot of folks, about what are you putting in your mouth, because you are what you eat. And in order to fully recover, you're going to have to tackle the digestive system and clean it out, rebuild it so that it's working for you properly. So really it's a twofold process. Flush, release,
Okay,
rebuild.
flush,
Okay?
release, rebuild.
That's it.
All right, I think that's really
Recovery.
great. We probably should keep the show to our agreed upon time. Otherwise, we'll keep going. Don't get us started.
Yep.
We'll probably end up calling
Don't.
this presenter view show "Don't Get Us Started.com" or something like that. But anyway, I just wanted to close this by inviting anyone who wants more information to hear Ramona speak on these types of topics to visit healinggrapevine.com. And it's a fantastic website. It's starting to get a lot of traffic, and everybody's egging her on to do more videos and more presenter views and audio. She's been invited on radio shows, and so it's starting to really ramp up because people are getting real results by implementing the detox strategies that. Can I use the word detox? No, I can't
Yes.
use that. Oh,
Yes.
okay.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm saying it, one of these days we might be
99.9%
told
of the
we're
things
not
we've
allowed
said
to,
today
but
we can't really say, so we're trying to be careful. Yeah, so
not supposed to
things that
say
you can't
that.
say.com. But I just wanted to say that there are a lot of, there is a methodology, a kit, if you will, a package. It's not it's not complicated, and we put it together at the simplest possible format. And also, we're providing you more and more with a hierarchy of decisions so that you know what you can do first. If you don't have a lot of money, there's stuff you can do. If you have tons of money, there's stuff you can do. But the process is not the same because a lot of people are strapped financially right now. And the good news is epigenetics actually leads the way to exactly what you can do for very low cost. And if you want to reach optimal health, you can,
Yeah.
utilize some of the tools that we provide. But anyway, Ramona, I just wanted to say, is there any other sites you want people to visit? Healinggrapevine.com, just opt in for the newsletter.
Yeah, come join us. Come join the community. We really are above and beyond. Like, there's just no boundaries. I believe you can recover from absolutely anything. And so that's, where my mission's taking me, and that's the research and the information I want to continue to share. So please
Absolutely.
join
So this has
us.
been the
Yeah.
Healing Grapevine presenter view starring Ramona Melvin from healinggrapevine.com. And our motto is release and recover. We look forward to seeing you on our website. Thank you.
Thank you.